Yes, guys, welcome back to SFeatleyTV. We are back with a new show, another new show. We thought we're trying to expand the F1 content that we've got coming for you guys. So please keep it locked in if you want to know more about your F1 content. So we are doing what we call F1's perfect formula, right? And what do I mean by that? The sport is basically you design a car to fit a formula of regulations, right? These are what these teams do on a regular basis every year, right? They have the regulations set out. They design a car, the best car in those regulations. So the perfect formula is the best machine in those regulations. So we are going to look at some of the best ever machines ever created by teams and designers in Formula One history. And what better place to start than in probably the biggest, most dominant car of all, the 1988 McLaren Mp44. This thing was a beast. It was a beast. 1988 was the last season they had for turbo hybrid, for turbos. This is the last time you saw turbos in F1 cars until our new turbo hybrid era we have now. It was a V6 Honda engine. That was just when Honda was actually good, right? V6 Honda engine with up to 900 brake horsepower, turbocharged by two turbos, right? Two HI turbos, and driven by two legendary drivers. Alain Prost, the professor, 4 times world champion. He was named the professor for a certain reason, because he would do whatever it takes to be ahead on points, right? So if it meant he finished second, he'd finish second. If it meant he finished fourth, he'd finish fourth, right? Senna was more the, I'm a racer, I'm going to go win, right? We know what Senna's about. Senna is the legend of nearly everyone, right? Probably the legend of Formula One. And people find that hard to believe because he's only won 3 titles. But if you just saw the way he drove, it's like something else. This is also the car he out-qualified Alain Prost at Monaco by 1.5 seconds in the same machinery. You don't do that against your teammate, especially when it's your teammate who's a 4-time world champion, or at the time was a 2-time world champion. You don't do it. You don't even see Hamilton do it with Bottas. So, and he described it as like an out-of-body experience with the car. So that's how in tuned he was, which is hard to believe. And Hamilton never describes his laps like that, but you see him come out of the car and he's so in wine with the car when he gets out. He's shaking from the adrenaline, the rush. You're shaking. And these cars, they are so on the limit. You have that when you push it so hard. And this is one of the greatest. You had 1986, obviously, in that turbo era with Mansell's car, and in 1987, because his predecessor, the MP4-3, finished second in that championship. But the MP4-4 was where it dominated. Like I said, 900 brake horsepower. Brake horsepower to a litre, there's 602, right? Designed by Steve Nichols, who had designed F1 cars for a long period of time. He designed F1 cars all the way up to 2001. He started his career in the 1980s. He had been designing F1 cars all the way up to 2001. And this, along with Gordon Murray, another legendary designer, this was their masterpiece for McLaren. And just some of the way it destroyed the competition, it was like you knew it was either going to be Senna or Prost on pole, and them and them for a race. This won 15 out of 16 races. This car won 15 out of 16 races. The only thing that's been ever that dominant, you could possibly say, is the Mercedes of 2014. But even then, they lost 3 races. This car had only lost 1 race in that season. It shouldn't have lost that race, because if Ayrton Senna didn't get taken out by a back marker, which was, I think, the Williams or Schlesser, he would have won that Grand Prix. And they would have won every single Grand Prix. Right? If you don't, I want to ask where Prost was in that race. Prost had retired with a mechanical issue. So if Senna won that Grand Prix, they would have won every single Grand Prix. They would have 100% record throughout that season, which is just, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And hence, and then obviously they were going to start the clamp down on turbos. They were going to take the turbos away. They were going to start clamping down on the power, clamping down on the speed. So they tried to do that with 91, and they tried to do that in 89, and obviously it worked to an extent. Then you had Williams coming in with 92 with their active suspension, and we will move on to those cars in other episodes. But you then, after this, started seeing the aggression of trying to slow the cars down, as they try and improve safety. Because these cars were very, very, very dangerous. You're traveling at speeds about 200 miles an hour. And there is a carbon fiber monocoque. The monocoque chassis built then was not the monocoque chassis we see today, where it could go in for a wall like Romain Grosjean, and you see the bit that's been in flames, it's still intact. The shell that keeps the driver safe is still intact. It's always intact. It's supposed to take that sort of puncher. If you did that in the McLaren Mp44, you would be fucking dead. Your head would have been taken out by the barriers, right? Your body would have been disintegrated, because that carbon fiber monocoque could not withstand the forces that went on in that accident. As Grosjean said in Netflix, he went under a force of 56 Gs. That's like 3-point-something tons on his, as his body became like 3.67 tons as he's going through that accident. In an F1 car back in the 80s, you're dead. You're dead. That's an end of it. There's so you'd have even more respect for drivers like Mansell, Piquet, Prost, Senna, Berger, these great names that you hear back in the 80s, even go as far back as Lauda, Hunt, Andretti, Fittipaldi, right, of the 70s, and you go back to the 60s of Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark, trying to think of some man name, John Surtees as well. Right? That's one I was trying to mean. And then even back to the 50s, right? 50s, they didn't have seatbelts. They didn't even have seatbelts, right? And the thing was that the engine was in front of the driver. It wasn't even behind, right? This was before they even had constructors, and it made it competitive. Because the reason we can now go on about the greatest machines ever is because the FIA back in 1959 came up with another championship for F1, the Constructors Championship. The reason now we have all the technology, all the data gathering, not just because of safety, but because of what happened in 1959. They introduced the Constructors Championship. This meant teams will now have to take their cars to the very, very edge of limit, come up with new ideas, inventive ideas to beat the regulations, to make that step forward. So come up with to move the engine to the back. Then come up with the idea of making the car light. Then come up with the idea to put wings on the car. then come up with the idea to put ground effect in it, right? All these revelations, all these innovations, all came from making the Constructors Championship. So now teams will take things to the very edge of limits. And that's why you also have regulations, because you would have madmen like Colin Chapman, who would literally take things to the point it would break and then take it fucking further. That's how mad he was. And this is what it came to be with the MP4-4, is that they would be able to now, they would be forced to take the regulations to the very edge, to the very limit, because you're not just competing for the teams, for the drivers' championship, you're competing for the teams' championship, right? And this is why you see teams like Mercedes and Ferrari dominate for so long, because they take their driving and they take their designing of the cars to the edge. So yeah, please do share this on Twitter, share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. We are 33 away from 1K. Please do that now. Big up, big up, big up. Yes, big up, big up, big up, big up, big up. And my thoughts and prayers go to Melina, Miss Mel. Please, please, please. I hope you're okay, right? And I'll try and speak to you later if I can. But I hope you're okay. I hope your father's okay. Please, please, right? Just keep us up to date, because I'm always at this time going to be worried about you, right? Don't worry about me, right? Just make sure you're all right. But yeah, yeah. So as I was saying, the MP4-4 was part of that massive battle between Prost and Senna, and this was when they were talking to each other, because this was when Senna first turned up on the scene at McLaren in 1988, and this was when they were talking to each other, and everything was civil back then. And Senna, in the end, ended up winning the championship in Suzuka with the car. He fell back to 14th in that car, but such is the dominance of the car, he fought his way back to claim the lead and the win, to then go on and win the Grand Prix and win the championship. The team's championship was wrapped up ages before, because it's just such a dominant car. It's such a car. I mean, some people get like, I mean, remember last time I saw someone drive that was Martin Brundle for Sky, and it must be such an honor. Just the raw, the fact that, don't forget, you're doing Monaco Grand Prix in a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it's not these little flappy paddles that they have now to keep their hands on the steering wheel, right? We're talking about doing Monaco, going up the speeds into about 160, 170 mile an hour with one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on the gear lever, right? This is what I'm talking about. We're doing this one-handed whilst doing the gear lever, going up the gears, right? This is what I'm saying. These guys are mad to be able to do what they did and be the pioneers into what we see with F1 today. But again, this is about pushing the car to then rules to their limits, and this is what this car did. This car pushed boundaries. It dominated. It pushed to the very limits of its design. And because they were able to win the championship like they did back in 1988, it meant it gave them the advantage of designing their car early for 1989. Because don't forget, 1989 afterwards, they take the turbos away. They took the turbos away after 1989 to clamp down on it. And still, they were dominant. It was Prost, Senna. We'd sit there, watch it, right, and wonder who's going to win. Pretty much. That's how we dealt with it. And obviously then you had the massive accident with Prost and Senna back in 1989 and the whole incident ever since then. But with the car, this car might have been only around for one season compared to some cars we might go into that have been there for a couple of seasons, because like they didn't change the rules that much as they much do now, which means you could use last year's car. The Lotus 49 was used for 3 or 4 seasons before they introduced the Lotus 72. So these cars would last a few seasons, and these cars would be developed during, not so much during the season that we see now. I mean, Mercedes have already bought updates to Imola after one round of Grand Prix. You wouldn't see that back then, right? But now you do, because it's a competition. It's a competition between the teams to produce the best car, because they need to produce the best car to be able to get A, the driver challenger for the driver championship, and B, get the prize money they need to invest in next season, right? Because when it comes to the constructors, people might say, oh yeah, Mercedes have won the constructors, game over, we don't have to worry about it no more, right? That's not the case, right? Third spot went all the way down to the wire because of competition, because money's at stake, big bucks. So we're talking tens of millions of pounds here, right? We're talking 50, 60 million quid between 2 spots. That is huge in terms of development for a car. And having a dominant car like McLaren did in 1988 with this car, it meant that the years afterwards was dominance. In 1989, in 1990. That's the advantage you get by having a dominant car in one season. You'd be able to finish the season early so you can design for the next season. Right? It's like we see with Hamilton and Mercedes today. There will be a tooth and Red Bull and Mercedes will battle this title out to the last race, while the others will look at next season to try and get the jump on them, because it's a massive regulation change. And we'll discuss the massive regulation changes 2022. We'll explain it in detail, what it will mean. We'll be doing that on the Checker Flag Show with the DNF1 podcast. Go and subscribe to them. Big up to them. We'll be discussing it with him on the Checker Flag Show at 6 p.m. So make sure you tune in for that. So that way you don't get lost in the new regulations. But yeah, and this thing is hard to probably talk about so much because this is before my time, right? But when you see what they managed to achieve, right? Because don't forget, they also won a championship in 84 and in 86 with Prost and Lauda McLaren. They were dominating the 80s, right? People forget because they see McLaren now and they see them struggling to get third place. But don't forget, they won Hamilton a championship. They won Mika Häkkinen a championship, right? Before that, they've been a dominant team, the second most dominant team in Formula One after Ferrari. And that's ever since their first race back in 1966 at the Monaco Grand Prix. So from the 1966 Monaco Grand Prix, in 22 years, they've managed to go from that to being one of the dominant forces in Formula One, right? They have gone from Ferrari winning, 3 titles? 4 titles, something like that, right? They had won pretty much 4 titles by the time they got to this year. It was 1988. And that's just been introduced into Formula One. Right? So, yeah, I would definitely trust me, if you ever get to see this car out on track, go and see it. Because the noise, the thrill, you sort of miss the noise and the thrill back then, because it's not the same as it is now. Now you don't even have to have earplugs. I mean, that's how poor the sound is. But Steve Nichols is one of the people responsible for this car, and he obviously designed the MP4-4 in '97, which got 3 victories. With Prost, and in the end, it finished second. This was his only first car. This was his first car in 1987, his first F1 car, right? As he became the car designer in McLaren, because John Bernard decided to leave and go to Ferrari. So he left to take the reins, designing MP4-4, which it wasn't a bad car. It was just that Piquet and Mansell had the stronger car by a mile with their, I think it was W16 or something like that. Yeah, 1988 came along, and him with Gordon Murray, and Gordon Murray's another legend. He's designed cars, F1 cars, for yoinks. I don't know whether he does that now still. I think he's probably retired now. But yeah, Gordon Murray, McLaren F1. So yeah, just having a look. So he was with Brabham. So until 1986, he was with Brabham, helping them. And in 1987, McLaren signed him up, and but was offered by Ron Dennis. And don't forget Ron Dennis. I'm going to shout out Ron Dennis here, because Ron Dennis, for people that don't know, and I don't want to go too much about Ron Dennis, because that's an F1 legend we could talk about in another show. But Ron Dennis was the man at McLaren. He was the man, right? He was that team principal that's like Ross Brawn at Ferrari, right? That's the sort of character he is. Like Toto Wolff is at Mercedes, right? He was an absolute brilliant driver to work with. And actually, if you don't thank him, you wouldn't have got Lewis Hamilton. He saw the potential in Lewis Hamilton to buy in his career. This is the sort of guy he is. You could tell, right? Not to tell that how great Lewis Hamilton would become, but knew he had that talent. So he invested his own money to be able to invest in the sport, and to be able to get him into Formula One. I am going to open the lines up. So if anyone does want to come on and talk about the car, the team that designed it, please do. The battle between Prost and Senna that it inhaled, but in the car, please do leave your comments, smash a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, right? And plus, leave your comments in. If you feel, put in the comments below after the stream whether you like the stream, whether you should keep doing the show, whether you want me to do another show. If you've got any ideas for a show, please DM me at SFeatley. Right, I'll put my DMs in there, so you can DM me at SFeatley with any sort of suggestions for a show, F1, football, anything like that. Or you can do that, or you can you can do that, or you can just leave your comments about how we can improve it. But yeah, Ron Dennis was CEO of McLaren Group for about he worked for about, I don't know, about years. He took over management in 1980, and withdrew his. Yeah, so he took over in 1980, and he left. How did he leave? Hamilton won his championship in 08. 2009. 2009. So after Hamilton won his championship, 2009, he stepped back as team principal. Martin Whitmarsh took over as team principal. But during that time, he had got Lauda to win the championship, Prost to win a championship, Senna to win a championship, Senna to win all three of his championships, Prost to win another championship with him, and yeah, win three championships with him, and then Mika Häkkinen another two championships, one constructors, one just drivers, not both seasons, and then Lewis Hamilton winning the drivers, but he didn't win the constructors. The teammate Kovalainen was not that good, but yeah, Ferrari managed to get constructors at the end of that season. So his career shows that he managed to get that team to dominate through the 80s with the leadership he showed, and also be able to realise what great talent is when there is nearly by picking out Hamilton's career, right? And this guy, I like I said, I don't want to let too much about it, but it's sort of McLaren is like Ron Dennis in a way. Obviously, it was set up by Bruce McLaren, but for the modern McLaren until 2009, that was sort of the McLaren that we knew under Ron Dennis, and it was sort of weird when he left. Like Wenger at Arsenal for something, but yeah, but obviously he was like the team principal at the time when they built this thing, and like I said, he had just some of the numbers here, like power to weight ratio, 1.6 brake horsepower per kilo. The weight was what, 524 kilos. It's 720 something kilos for today's cars, so much heavier. 150 litre fuel tank, Honda fuel injection, right, 4-valve cylinder. It was a V6 actually. It wasn't actually a V8 or a V10. It was only a V6, which was quite surprising. Carbon ceramic brakes, right, and yeah, it's this was the very was the last, obviously the last cars of the turbo era, but my God, it really set the standard of that era. Really did. It smashed that era to pieces. Right. Just how dominant it was. So, I mean, I'd love to drive that thing. I really would. I really, really would. I'll probably shit myself doing it, but I'd love to. If anyone does want to come on, I have leave the link in the chat below. Hopefully we get some guests on for the next shows so we can sort of debate amongst each other. I might even do a tier list actually with the greatest machines. But we'll wait and see on that one. And yeah, obviously this, like I said, this is a brand new show. I'm trying to start this off with F1 perfect formula. But let us know if you want me to continue it or not. Leave it in the comments below. Yeah. There's not much else to say on it, really. So I'm going to leave it there, to be honest. Otherwise, I'll start rambling on. So, but yeah. So what I'll do is I'll leave it there. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow at what time did I set it as? Can't remember what I said it as. StreamYard. What time did I say I'll be back? Premier League journey force. Yeah, I'll be back at 4 p.m. Big up McLaren. Rich Sports. The links in the description. If you know anything about F1, please jump on, and we'll keep this going. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. If you really want to have your say on it, please do, because otherwise we're gonna wrap this up anyway. Because like there's not much else to say. It was such an iconic car of the time. It just showed good old-fashioned Formula One at its best. And the noise is just what we miss from F1 now. It's not going to be the same. They're trying to make it now carbon neutral by, 2030, I think. How that's going to add, I don't know, but there we go. Richard, your first time on the channel, mate. How are you?
No, good, thanks, mate. Yeah, I was going to say, from looking at your thumbnail, it makes me think of like Prost, Senna, that kind of battle of teammates. And I think, quite iconic design, wasn't it? Really good.
Yeah, obviously by Steve Nichols, Gordon Murray, and his sister car, the MP3, it was okay. But obviously you had that dominant car with the Williams of 1987. And in 1988, you just hit it right on the head with the Prost Senna battle. Prost just turning up. This was when they were talking to each other. I think that's what you want to see,
isn't it? Teammates are actually racing properly on the track, some people we don't see now, with like team orders.
I mean, like, you sort of saw it with like Hamilton Rosberg in a sense, where like the battle got quite sort of heated there as well.
Yeah, because because they're so far ahead, maybe manufacturers weren't quite so bothered because they were going to win the title anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that they're not too fussed because they knew they were dominant anyway. And yeah, I just feel that it was it's like I said before, they won 15 that season. They had 16 races and they won 15 of them. They should have won all 16. They had one retirement, 2 retirements. One were mechanical, and one was just getting hit by a back marker. With about 4 laps to go before the end, which was, I think for Senna, a bit hard to take. But obviously, he went on to win the championship there, and that's what it reminds me of. Because I think in that race, he dropped to 14, but because of the dominance of the car, he'd been able to fight his way off. And back then, you had half the grid that were turbo, you had half the grid that were not turbo. So it's like having 2 class systems.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of something that people talk about in Formula One. Obviously, the car's a factor as well. I think with this, it's probably good having 2 of the best drivers in the same team, which makes it more interesting, I suppose. Do
you feel that Arsenal? Do you feel that F1 should try sort of that sort of system so that we can try and get more seats available for drivers to get in the sport?
It's difficult, isn't it? So I saw you did a stream recently about safety, and I think cars are definitely a lot safer in terms of like having them. I can't remember what it's called. You know, the sort of visor bit they got at the front of the car.
The halo.
So the halo. And I haven't watched Formula One loads recently. I used to watch it quite a lot in the 90s more.
I've watched this season, to be honest. It's getting
like safety. I think this season the interesting thing is like can Lewis Hamilton get his 8th title and beat Schumacher, because Schumacher's record was incredible. He was dominant for so long, and I think Lewis Hamilton.
Watching when I was a kid.
What's so impressive about Hamilton, I think, is that the very first season, like first race podium, second race podium, there was no like get up to speed.
It's like the first corner. No, it's just the first corner as well. He's like, oh yeah, okay, your teammate. All right, you're double world champion, going on the inside. All right, I'll go right on the outside of you then.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think aggressive racing from the start, and that's what you want to see as a spectator, just someone going all out to win all the time. And I hope he does it, because it'd be great to see him get the record. But I was just asking someone today at work and thinking, if he gets the 8th, do you think that'll be it? Do you think he'll retire and start doing other things, or do you think? Because it's nice to go out on a win.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice
it's
to
nice
go
to go
out
out and win. I
with the
mean, he's
record.
only got a 1 year. He's only got a 1 year extension. And obviously we saw Russell at the Sakir Grand Prix last season. He should have won that Grand Prix, to be honest. That was in his hands. That was just mistakes by Mercedes and bad luck. But I do feel. But then I've seen Russell with like Imola there, where he was just making that mistake and hitting Bottas. So you like, is he ready or not? Because they want to bring in a driver, not just with the new regulations, but a driver that's going to be there, bang, straight on the dot, because they know Verstappen is going to be dominant. So
that's what I mean. I wonder whether Hamilton, there'll be a lot of up and coming drivers, whether he'll get another win and just go, okay, that's it, I've got 8. It's difficult to know whether he wants to like try and push it, try and get 9, or whether he'd be happy with like 8 is fantastic.
I
Obviously,
think 8. Look, even if he doesn't win his 8th title this season, if he wanted to call it a day after this contract, I wouldn't blame him. Because for me, statistically, he is the best. Right? I mean, he's about to hit 100 wins. He'll hit 100 wins this season. He'll hit 100 pole positions this season.
It's like I'm just thinking like in football when Man City nicked the title from us a few years ago, and you think, okay, Alex Ferguson was going to retire. Then you're thinking, damn, I'm going to do another season because I want to go out on the top. I just wonder, Hamilton is so competitive. Maybe it would be quite.
It depends. Also, I think like. It throws it up in the air as well because these new regulations. Does he want to go through all these new regulations and just for a season? And
because it can kind of throw things out a bit, can't it? Maybe it's not going to be quite the same for him. Or just a thought actually, because he's been so good for so long. You think when he's going to retire, it's going to be quite difficult to step away from that and suddenly not be a driver. So it's quite a big.
Find someone else to support.
Yeah, no, because he's been like the best for so long, and I think as British fans are really spoiled over the years with a massive overrepresentation of British drivers like dominating the sport. It's been very good. Like so many individual winners.
I mean, like Lando and George Russell, I think are definitely great talents to look forward to. Lando again, like in Imola, could have got pole, and to be honest, with those margins, really should have got pole. But even then, got 7th, and then fought his way up to land on the podium again. Like Lando landing on a podium. So and George Russell again getting nearly up to Q3. It was about 2/10 off Q3. So you can see the Williams is performing, and all he can do is outperform the machinery he's got, and that's what he's been doing on a consistent basis. It's just these little mistakes he's got to iron out if he wants to go to that next level with Mercedes and then go and challenge Verstappen. You got Leclerc there as well, that's a threat. Always going to be a threat with that Ferrari, and they were having a good start to the season. So it all bodes well for British talent. It's just and like look, Hamilton, even though he had front wing end plate damage during that Grand Prix, as I said in my match reaction, as my review, he still had the pace to possibly catch him and win the race, despite the damage. It's just that mistake that cost
him. Isn't it? That's what I mean. It's just, I think there's certain drivers in the sport where at some point they're just head and shoulders above other people, like consistently. But he's always going to be always good, pretty much. You know that he's the one to beat for a long time.
It's not denying the talent of Verstappen. Verstappen that perform at the car on a regular basis, but it's just if you ain't gonna lose it, then use it. So
yeah, I hope he does it this season because it'd be great for him to be the sort of standalone win of like eight championships is pretty impressive. And
yeah, I mean, you see how hard it is for people to win one. So some people don't even win a Grand Prix.
So Rosberg retired after winning one. It's just like, okay, that was enough. It was like so much.
Yeah, I try not to mention him. He sort of cheated on that one for me. Austria. Yeah, and then like a lot of things sort of in terms of retirements because Hamilton won a lot more races than he did, because the amount of retirements and their liability issues, it sort of boded well for Rosberg. But that's the way it
happens
goes.
sometimes. That's
Yeah.
so out of your hands a bit.
But yeah, I mean, obviously MP44 though is just like an example of why it was so great that they established the championship back in '59 after 9 years of drivers' titles. This is why when they see Mercedes back in the '50s and they think, why haven't you got any constructors titles? That's because they didn't have a constructors title until '59, and obviously then you saw them move the engines to the rear side. Then you saw them lowering the weight. Then you saw them bringing the wings. Then you saw bringing ground effect, and all these developments, which now affect the road car industry. So having these great machines as examples shows that sort of that technology then gets embedded into the car industry until the next innovation comes along.
Where the innovation starts, isn't it? The high end, and then you can adapt this and make it more commercial, which is that's one of the things about whether they say
my Merc now has got like a little override gearbox where I can hit the paddles on the gearbox to kill the amount of revs. So it's got its own little override flappy gearbox. So, but it's using mainly automatic. And that's the thing. That comes from F1. That was all developed through F1. Eventually, then seeps through into the car industry. This is why it's important that F1 stay relevant to sort of like the hybrids, and now going into carbon neutral.
It could drive technology, couldn't it? It's things they could test at the high end, and because they got an incentive to put things in, and because obviously if it's in F1, they've got the best people working on it, haven't they? The best facilities to test things.
That's the thing. That's why it's the pinnacle. It's the best drivers, the best teams, the best designers, the best mechanics. You can't get any better than what you get here. So, which is why it gets broadcast all around the world. You get more prestigious when you win an F1 title than any other motorsport title that you come across. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, thanks for coming on as always.
Yeah, no worries. I thought I'd jump in. I'm not an expert on Formula One, but it's quite interesting to hear people's opinions.
I'm definitely gonna because obviously I was at hospital, so this one was a little bit rushed in terms of research, but I'm definitely gonna be researching a lot more in the next one. But and then might even redo this one. But it was just to show an idea to sort of see if we can expand the content of F1 a little bit more, rather than just doing one news show and then the watch-alongs and stuff, just like what we're doing in football as well. So, but yeah, tomorrow obviously we've got all the Premier League preview. We've got the checkered flag show with DNF1 again. I talk about the new explanation. So we'll be explaining the new regulations next year in detail and what it will mean. But then we've got the game, and then Saturday we've got Leeds. I think it's Leeds Man United. No, Chelsea West Ham. Then Sunday's Leeds Man United at 1 o'clock. So as if you're free, just let us know, and I'll drop you the link, and you can come on.
Yeah, cheers. No,
panel.
Get used to playing on Sunday, unfortunately. It's a bit annoying.
Yeah, it's used to it when you play in the Europa League as well. So, but at least at least we're still in the Europa League after this.
At least we're still in the Premier League.
Yeah. No, I can't. I'm not even going to get into it, mate. I'm not even
going
to get into it. I mean, I saw some of your streams last night, and I'm like night before, and I'm like, I really want to join, but it's so late at night because everything's getting announced at night. And I'm like, I can't do a stream because I'll get killed by my mom. Like, because I'll keep me up all night. So like I'm seeing this streams, and I'm like, fuck that, I want to say something, but I can't go on.
I was like doing one a few days ago, and halfway through doing it, people are reading out press announcements and saying, "Oh, this has just happened." We go, "What the hell?"
Yeah, it's like it's like you're watching Twitter and it's going all off. I mean, I'm watching Goldbridge's stream and he's getting phone calls like, "Oh, it's all kicking off now." You can hear him through the phone. It's all kicked off now.
Press briefings go, AC Milan are out. These are out. Like,
And
It's
it's
just
like
a Real
everyone's out,
Madrid
and I'm
life.
like, what the hell is going on here?
No, cheers, mate.
No, it's all right. No worries. And yes, guys, as ever, if you want to join, just DM me a link, DM me, and we'll try and get you on at some point. But we'll be back tomorrow with the Premier League journey to start off with. But take care and see you later. Bye bye.